Just a few housekeeping items before we go ahead with the webinar. Wanted to let you know that we are recording this webinar, so it will be available to you afterwards. We'll send out an email so you can share with your company, and also you can review it. If you have any questions or comments, you can go ahead and review the recording of that. Also, be sure to use the questions tab on the GoToWebinar control panel. We want to make sure that you submit any questions you have during the webinar, because we will be doing a Q&A afterwards at the end. Just a few introductions. My name is Melissa Patterson. I'm the Chief Conversation Starter here at Servosity. And if you need to contact me for anything, there is my contact information right there. And our presenter today will be Damian Stevens. He is our founder and CEO of Servosity. And there is his contact information should you need to reach out to him for anything as well. And on our agenda today, we're going to be going over a few items. The first one, what is the top 10 questions your clients ask? And how do you generate leads? And how do you price and profit managed services as you build in with selling disaster recovery as a service? Building your managed services, we're going to be going over how to increase your revenue, as well as answering any questions that you have throughout the webinar, so be sure to submit those at any time during the webinar. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Damian Stevens to get started.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. I appreciate that. Well, guys, let's jump right in. I wanted to start with just one slide only on why some of our partners choose Servosity. And on that note, we're, of course, a completely partner-driven company. Everything we do is for our partners. It's you plus us that makes success and delivers for your clients. So why some of the partners have chosen us are for our geo-redundant, our geographically redundant cloud infrastructure, our audited facilities that help with regulated and compliance-driven industries. We back it by 24/7, 365 support at no additional cost. And we back that with real people here in the U.S. We have broad support, Windows, Mac, Linux, VMware, Hyper-V, and more. And there's no hardware required to deliver the solutions to your clients. So real quickly, we'll get into it. Our mission is to deliver the mission-critical, super important stuff in terms of backup and disaster recovery as a service to managed service providers and ITV sellers. And our goal is to do that in a way that makes your brain do a little bit of a happy dance. Let's dive right in and talk about how to sell this. Before we really get into how to sell it, we probably should talk about what the questions and the top 10 questions your clients will ask you or should be asking you. And probably the number one is, why do I need it? And really closely correlated, isn't what I have good enough? Most businesses realize they probably need some form of backup, not all, but most. So a lot of times it's, why do I need it, or isn't what I have good enough? We're going to talk about all the different things of good enough and what that is. But let's just dive into those, because these are questions you need to be able to articulate well. And it's not only to your advantage to grow revenue, but the reasons that we're talking about this is we're talking about selling disaster recovery, but we're really also talking about looking out for your client's best interests. And if you don't articulate well enough that they really need something better than the USB drive that they bought at Sam's or Best Buy, then you're really doing them a disservice. So it's certainly about sales and growing revenue for you and your company, but it's really also about watching out for your best interests of your clients. So when it comes to good enough, commonly people have some sort of on-site backup, not always an off-site backup, USB hard drive, maybe tape backups they're rotating. There's a ton of reasons why that may not be good enough. We're going to get into other things that could be that, but a lot of times it's a tape. So why not tape? Well, tapes have a 100% failure rate. It's not if, it's when tapes will fail. And usually if you're getting it offsite at all, you're relying on a kind of complex human process. All it takes is one person to leave the company or be sick, and your process is jeopardized. Same thing with drives. You might be rotating USB hard drives or other hard drives. Nothing wrong with the hard drives, but they're not really business-grade backup solution. They're not intended to do that. They're not really intended to be an off-site solution. It could be any number of things, from a NAS in terms of the backup now. On the third one, why don't I just use a consumer-grade backup or file sync? Right, so they won't say it that way, but what we mean is if you listen to the radio or TV ads, you'll see a lot of consumer-grade backups that are offering things, and they're even trying to kind of move upstream into business-grade use. What you'll find about a lot of the consumer-grade offerings is they may not be built for business, and they're certainly not built for MSPs. They're difficult to manage centrally. Often they'll have bandwidth caps, and I don't mean total bandwidth, but for example, the consumer-grade backups usually will have, even in their service level agreement that you agree to, the more data that you upload, the slower they make they throttle your bandwidth for your clients. So often when you try to upload large amounts of data, when you're backing up hundreds of gigs or terabytes with a single client, they will slow it down to where it becomes unusable or nearly unusable. And they're just not built with retention and things like databases and other complex needs. They're not built with recovery time in mind. Another option that some people think is backup or confuse is file sync. I think file sync is a great thing. When I say that, I mean Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, Microsoft's version of Live Drive, I believe. Any of those things, they're great. If you don't want to have a local file server and you want kind of a web-based sync, great, use those. They're not an alternative to backup. They don't typically keep versions or prior versions. They're designed for syncing and collaborating, which is very different than backup and disaster recovery, imaging, snapshot verification. They're not going to give you the compliance. A lot of times they don't store your data encrypted at rest, just in transit. So there's a whole lot of reasons that file sync is not backup. Consumer grade backup is not necessarily business grade backup. So you want to make sure you articulate those. Hopefully you can articulate how are you better. Not necessarily than every managed service provider out there, although I hope you can answer that to a certain degree, but how are you better? And really, how is what we're doing here better than what they might just get on the radio and the cheapest solution? How is this better? Let's talk about some of the real reasons, not just we think this is better, but how is this really better? What does business grade backup mean and why? And we'll talk about several of those reasons, but one of them we hinted at in our first slide. When you're looking at consumer grade backup or file sync, it's a lot of times not encrypted at rest. It's very rarely do they store your data in more than one location. So that means that it's in one data center, and while a data center might be reasonably secure and reliable, it's storing all the proverbial eggs in one basket. So if you really need your data, you want to go with a company that has multiple facilities to store your data. There's a ton of ways to differentiate how you're better and how the solution is better and different than a lot of these other options, and then you can have a more apples to apples comparison. One thing you certainly need to be able to demonstrate is how much will this cost. On the surface of that, it sounds like a pretty easy question to answer, but then you get into, do you want to price it monthly? Do you want to sell it annually or 3 years with a hardware purchase? Did you account for the data growth over the next year or 3 years with the business? Did you account for things like sufficient retention to make sure that you're protected adequately? Being able to determine that cost easily and quickly, so not only your sales team can do it, not just the owners, but the sales team, and then also the tech guys. If your tech guys, if your engineers can't determine the cost and give a pretty reasonable, accurate idea of the cost to your clients, you're probably missing out on opportunities. Who do they call for support? The way that we work, that answer is you. They should trust you. They should be able to call you. The way that we work, of course, is we are your go-to team for support to back you up. So your clients call you, and we train you, and you're prepared to answer those questions. And in normal scenarios, you don't need our support team. But we're all here because if IT were easy and always went as planned, we might not be here. There's not as many of us would be here. So when things don't go to plan, you can call us for support. Just to touch on differentiators, obviously, they go with a consumer grade backup. A lot of times they can't call you. They have to call an 800 number. May be outsourced to another country. You don't really know who you're getting a hold of. You're getting kind of level 1 techs that don't have the knowledge of their environment. So them calling you, you knowing their environment, and you being able to get experts on the line, if there's an issue you can't solve, is going to be critical when it comes down to restoring or recovering data. Related to that, how fast will you be able to restore my data or my servers? How long will it take? In either scenario, there's different speeds that we can talk about how to sell this and how to price it that way. You need to have that answer. Even if you sell them one of our more economical offerings, you need to say it's going to take 3 days to get you up and running versus the faster offering, I can do it in less than 1 day or in hours. Whatever those things are, either way, setting expectations is how you win and how you create a positive experience when they do have that inevitable file restore or server recovery event. Predictability. People value that. The cloud is fantastic. Backup DR in the cloud is fantastic, but people don't want to be nickel and dime. They need predictable cost. So we can talk about that and recommend things. We strive to make it easy to understand for you so you can make it really easy to understand for your clients. This is what it'll cost you. If you double your data, it's going to cost you more, but it shouldn't be something where you have to change their bill every single month. Now, do I trust you or you and your backup partner, right? That's probably one they're asking. Do I really trust you that you're going to be in it for the long haul, right? You might normally say yes. It depends on the tenure of the relationship, right? If you are 3 or 4 months into a relationship with a business client, they may say, I wonder if these guys are going to be around in 5 years or if we'll still be working with them. So that's the kind of thing they're probably asking. Are you going to be around in 5 years when I need my data and I started backup with you? And is your backup provider going to be around? Do I trust them? Do they have good security? Do they have good answers to these questions? Can they address compliance? And they should be able to ask all of these questions and you be able to give them good answers that make them realize that you've thought this through more than they have, certainly, and hopefully more than your typical managed service provider has even thought this through. And then lastly, how can I trust but verify you and your work? So we're going to talk about that in a little more detail, but essentially what that comes down to is we give you the options to manage backups for your clients completely, where you might say, look, if you trust me, I've got it, don't worry about it, I'll monitor it, I'll make sure backups work. However, depending on your clients and what they want to do, you can keep them in the loop. You can have it send them email alerts daily if you'd like. You can have it not send them email alerts and give them web-based access to log in and see just their accounts, but not your other clients' accounts. So whether it's web-based access to the reports to see exactly what's going on so they can check up on you anytime they want, or daily emails of what's going on, you can expose them at the appropriate level to the reporting and access to their data, even the ability to do self-service restores if you choose. So you can, on one hand, manage all the backups for them and everything that's going on, and on the opposite extreme, you can give them access to restore all of their data, view all the reports, get email reports. So the idea is you can vary this and per client. So if you have a small business that they trust you, you might do all of the backup management. They might not even want to get anything or know what's going on. They just trust you. On the other hand, you might have a larger professional services firm that has an IT presence, has maybe a junior IT presence that actually works there on site, and maybe they want to be kept in the loop, or the management team wants to be kept in the loop to the status of their backups to know, and without a shadow of a doubt, that they are getting the things that they need to get from you. Let's dive in and talk about this in a little more detail. So one of the first questions you need to ask when we're talking about building an offering and pricing this and selling disaster recovery is the common misperceptions between backup, DR or disaster recovery, and business continuity. A lot of people use these terms interchangeably, backup and disaster recovery. They do complement each other, but they're very different. Business continuity is something separate. So basically, for real simple terms, to me, backup and restore is essentially focused around recovering data. So think restore files, restore databases. You might restore entire VMs, but it's really around data recovery. So this is the kind of thing that if somebody deletes a file or an email message that they needed from a proposal to an important client, you could restore that data for them. And traditionally, that's what backup has done. It's been more kind of data recovery oriented. Nothing wrong with it. That's the base level. If you can't ensure your clients that you won't lose their data, they're probably not going to trust you. So everything builds upon backup. Although a lot of offerings don't really do backup. Generally, a really good business class backup offering not only is storing the data in multiple facilities, encrypting it, they also should offer very flexible and deep versioning. So I talk about versioning for just a moment. A lot of people kind of glaze over when we talk about the ability to manage versions. It's kind of like snapshots or revision history. Basically what that means is we want to make sure we keep enough versions of your data so that if something happens, you have a good copy of your data. So fortunately, there's this popular virus called CryptoLocker and its variants that have really lended even more credence to this. So that's why versioning matters. If you get a virus on, your client gets CryptoLocker, let's say on a Thursday before a holiday weekend, so they're not there on Friday, they may not notice it. They call you Monday, and let's say you were exceptionally busy, and maybe you didn't get on site until Tuesday. Now we have almost a week that's gone by where we would have taken backups, and other software would have taken backups. And so guess what? Your prior night's copy of backups and 2 nights ago and 3 nights ago are all backups of the CryptoLocker infected virus files, which are encrypted. And so in a normal scenario and in some DR scenarios, if you're only storing 2 or 3 days worth of versions, you'd be completely at risk because all your versions would be infected. So a really good backup solution allows you to do any level of retention. So we don't limit you in any way. You could do only 7 days, 30 days, 60 days, a year, 5 years, 7 years. We have clients that do over a decade worth of versions. And essentially that means you can go back and restore any version of any file that was modified yesterday, a month ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 7 years ago, to the state that it was in at the time of backup. That gives you a lot of peace of mind and a lot of power, and we give you the ability to mix and match that based on data. So for example, you might keep 30 days worth of email and 2 years worth of QuickBooks, for example, and that really allows you to optimize cost and still give the most flexibility. So you want a really good backup solution that's reliable, that you can manage, and that should give you really good versioning. Now, a lot of disaster recovery solutions are really good in disaster recovery and perhaps weak in versioning. So that's why backup and DR are often different things. So disaster recovery is all about planning for what you hope never happens, the disaster. But let me broaden that a little bit. Everybody says the disaster is the fire, the flood, a building burns down. Yes, those kind of things happen, ice storms, etc. What you should prepare for is the broader term of disaster recovery. So more common than the building burning down is the roof leaked onto the server room, or some thieves broke in and they stole the servers along with the laptops or the desktops. And so it's not maybe a site loss disaster, but it's a disaster because you've lost your servers. By the way, a real common one of why you don't store your backups on site, because generally they may store the backups and steal the backup drives or the backup tapes along with the backup with the servers. So you really need something off-site. So that disaster, broaden your view of what disaster means. Basically any event that kind of impacts the business so that it can't operate should be defined as some level of a disaster in terms of disaster recovery. So disaster recovery, to frame it, is essentially recovery of operations, right? So that impacts operations of the business, it stops it, and you have to do something to get the business back into operations. So that is generally this, another common, really, really common example is you upgrade Windows, the service pack doesn't take, or some application, and they're down. The hard drive crashes. That could be defined as a disaster in disaster recovery. It's a very minor on the scale of disaster, but if it halts operations, that's still somewhat of a disaster. in terms of operating the business. So that's what disaster recovery is. Modern disaster recovery means that you're doing some form of imaging of the machines, not just backup of the files and databases, but imaging of the machines so that you can bring back kind of mirror images of the entire machine. So why DR versus backup? The answer is speed. Think of backup as the base level you should have. DR, basically, it costs a little bit more and you get much faster recovery. So if you had to recover a Windows server, rebuild a domain controller, set up SQL or Exchange, install the service packs, restore the data, you could easily be looking at 2 or 3 days worth of work to recover that and make it operational for your client if all you were doing was backing up and restoring their data. So great, you haven't lost their data, but they've been down for 3 days. If that's acceptable to them, backup may be acceptable price level. If it's not, they need to really be invested into some disaster recovery where you're imaging that machine and can provide the ability to recover to a virtual machine or to bare metal. So bare metal means to another server, a physical server, and recover to a virtual machine, even if it started as a physical. But the idea of disaster recovery from a sales perspective is, okay, great, backup costs you X, and disaster recovery costs you a little more than X. But the difference is I can get you back up and running in 3 days with backup. With disaster recovery, I'm going to have a standby server or virtualization solution, several ways that we'll talk about how you can pull this off, but we can go into the how of that at a later date. But you can easily bring them up and running in as little as minutes and as slow as hours. So now you can bring the recovery down into hours, minutes, depending on how you set this up. So if they call you, you could remote in, have a standby server, and bring back their server or servers in as little as minutes. So it's all about saying it used to be 3 days of downtime, now it's an hour of downtime. That's why disaster recovery matters to your clients, because this will probably strike when it's the worst time for your client's business. Lastly, I want to talk about business continuity. We in the industry really calls everything a DR solution. And we even call our products DR server, things like that. It's really something you should look at from a business continuity perspective, and really that's the highest ROI for your client, which is really not just how do I keep your data and make sure I don't lose it, and the second of DR is how do I recover in an event. Business continuity is saying, great, I've got to do both of those things, but I just need to take the whole operational picture and minimize downtime. So business continuity is really just about continuing operations no matter what happens. If an employee's out sick and they don't come back in with the backup tape, if a patch comes out from Microsoft or some other vendor that screws up your application, your database, how do you roll back to a version that works? If the hard drive crashes, if the internet's out, any number of things, how do I continue my operations and minimize the impact to my business? There are cases where your business might be half operational and not fully operational, but minimize the impact. So you want to look at from a business continuity perspective. You would still utilize what we call our DR server, but it's really in the planning phases and the level of detail you put into the plans and how you set up for this that you deliver real business continuity for your clients. Let's talk about how much do they need. We've talked about there's kind of backup, DR, and then business continuity if you want to look at from low to high levels of need and recovery. So the lowest need would be a non-regulated industry that's not terrifically worried about security, and a longer recovery time is okay. This is just a broad generalization, not all this way, but a decent example is sometimes manufacturing is this way. If it's a manufacturing operation that's maybe not regulated, they're not super worried about security if it's a smaller business and they've got 30 days of inventory sitting in their warehouse, so if their manufacturing is interrupted, as long as they get back up and running within a month, they're okay. Well, backup is what they need. They don't want to lose their data, but if it took you several days or a week to get them up and running, they might be okay with that, and the price point of backup might be what they're looking for. A medium need may or may not be in a regulated industry, but downtime and data loss probably have a significant business impact. So a great example of this would be most professional services. Even a doctor with a doctor's office, an attorney with just one, even just one attorney at the firm, even smaller businesses, even a Main Street kind of shop that maybe is not regulated, if they're out of business for 3 or 4 days and can't transact business, that may have a real cost to them. I've seen these things happen the days before Christmas, on the Christmas rush for a retail operation, that could be disastrous to their overall year in revenue if they are unable to process credit cards or do other things that their business systems do. So the idea is you ought to be able to calculate an ROI and say, this is the cost of downtime, this is the risk, here's the cost of the solution. Let's talk about where the right mix is. It's not always selling them the most expensive, highest end solution. It's about the right fit. So a high need would be they have very low downtime or data loss tolerance, maybe almost none, or it may be required for regulatory compliance. So any publicly traded companies dealing with Starbucks, most people everybody that processes credit cards is subject to some level of PCI compliance. So even restaurants and other small businesses are subject to PCI regulations. Of course, attorneys, CPAs, healthcare, whether it's a doctor practice, a hospital, etc., are dealing with HIPAA compliance. So regulatory compliance is paramount, and you want a backup offering that will actually help you meet HIPAA compliance and others, and that is something you don't get from every other company out there. So you want to meet this with the right needs, deliver the right speed of recovery that may need to be up and running much faster and have a much more regulated view of the world. So why would they choose you? Well, hopefully you understand backup and disaster recovery. If you don't, that's something we can certainly help you understand at a deeper level, but understand it better than the average MSP. Hopefully you understand their business and they trust you at some level. If they've hired you to take care of their operation, their IT operations, hopefully they really do trust you, and they should trust you more than a radio ad and an 800 number and somebody they've never met. Or email alerts if they don't trust you. So, again, just, give them the level of insight that they want to feel comfortable that you're really doing your job. Email alerts, online reporting that's available 24/7, whatever makes them comfortable that you're really doing this. And then they want to know that when failure or disaster strikes, they can count on you. They're going to be looking to you, not necessarily us, to really perform in an event of a disaster. Now, the way we've set up things, you wouldn't normally necessarily need someone at Servosity to intervene. You can do all this without us. But that's why we're staffed 24/7 with real people in the U.S. so that you can get an engineer on the line when you need them if it's 2 a.m. on a Saturday and you can't get that Exchange server up and running. If it's something critical and it's not a particularly great time, but you need to get up and running, that's the sort of thing you need to make sure you communicate to your client. Look, this stuff's important to you. If your business is on the line, do you want to call an 800 number with a company you've not met? Do you want to partner with us that understands your actual business operations? They may not frame it this way, but why choose you plus Servosity? So why are you partnering with us? Why might you? How can you position this to your client? The way you should position this is you understand their business. You're going to be there for them. You understand their unique needs. You've looked at other firms that offer backup and disaster recovery, and you've vetted them, and you've chosen Servosity to partner with instead of partnering with every firm there is, to partner at a deeper level and have a better understanding. We'll deliver the state-of-the-art infrastructure, the security, and the software. We deliver the audited and geo-redundant facilities to store the data in, the 24/7, 365 support to back you. But most importantly, never mind the software, the infrastructure, and the support, we're partnered with you. We're here when you need us and when your client does, and there's nothing like that for when you find that out and you really need that. There's just nothing else that substitutes for that. First time you drop the ball on that will be probably the last time the client works with you. So we touched on this a little bit, but again, why not choose tape backup, right? That one's out there still, right? There's a ton of reasons to choose tape. Tapes they're the equivalent technology of cassette tapes, right? So I don't think many people are walking around with their Walkman anymore listening to cassettes, right? CDs, MP3s, a whole sets of generations of technology, newer, more sophisticated. More importantly, it's just just like your audio tape sounded worse the more you played it. Tape degrades. It doesn't hold the data in the bits. It fails. It has a lot of failure processes. It's human and error prone. If you put enough time and money and effort into it, you might be able to make tape a reliable solution. But there's so many ifs that nobody does this, and it's more cost effective to use cloud backup than it is tape if you really want several copies of the data, unless you're going to make multiple backups per day and rotate them offsite immediately and do levels of effort that almost nobody does. Tape backup is just not a good vehicle or a reliable choice when you're counting on it for your business. Commonly, USB or NAS or some other local disk drive backup. Very often there's not layers or levels of redundancy. USB hard drives are nice and cheap, which is good. We recommend them to store an extra copy of your data on them if you want, but they're just not, they shouldn't be your only protection. They're very inexpensive. They're prone to things like bit rot, data corruption errors. They're just not designed to be redundant or reliable, and they're generally not something you take off site. So no matter how reliable a NAS might be, for example, with RAID, it can still fail and it's still on site. We've talked about consumer grade backups. They don't often store your data in more than one location. They often will throttle your bandwidth, perhaps not protect it from a security perspective, perhaps not offer compliance with HIPAA and other regulated industries. And they generally are not set up at all to serve MSPs or really help you work with your clients in any productive way. File sync is a great application, but it's not backup. So you need backup in addition to file sync. You're not going to, if you use file sync and you get CryptoLocker, then within a day or two or three, probably all the versions of your files are encrypted, including the ones synced off-site. It's also not, it generally can cause issues with compliance and other things. Why not choose another business-grade backup solution? So that's a really good question. You know, I've heard of XYZ or another MSP uses XYZ. So really that's a question you could probably answer even better than I can. Why did you choose us versus others? There's certainly others out there. What we care about is taking care of you and taking care of your clients and being there for you whenever you need us. And the fact that you've partnered with us, and if you've done this rightly, partner with us and not partner with 5 firms or 20 firms, you can't do this by offering a line card where you don't care what brand of hardware you sell as long as you sell it. You need to be invested into an enterprise-grade business backup solution where your salespeople know how to quote it properly, your techs really know how to set it up and recover from it. So if you partner with Servosity, that's something you need to say, we have vetted them thoroughly, we choose them for all these reasons. And hopefully, again, you plus us is a really strong combination that others really can't match. So now we've talked about a lot of the details. Let's talk about how we generate leads. So a lot of our partners will offer free trials to the clients. Some of our more successful partners will use this as a tool to win new business. And I don't just mean new backup business. A lot of partners will get their foot in the door. Maybe they're not looking to switch managed services firms, but they're not happy with the managed service firm, or the managed services firm doesn't really have a very good solution or offering, and they go to you, or they're looking for backup and disaster recovery. Win them. Use this as your foot in the door. Even if all you do is backup or disaster recovery for that client, take that good experience and turn it into something where in 6 months or a year or two down the road, you take that foot in the door and use it to grow and land and expand and land a new managed services contract for your company. So a lot of our clients do that. The free trials can be unlimited and they're no cost to you, so you can set up trials for any company you want. You can obviously use them as a way to generate leads and expand. Tactically, give your engineers, not just one of them, all of them, the ability to set up trials. Here's why this matters. They're the guys that are remoting in or visiting the client sites, and they're hopefully checking things like backups, and then they'll see, oh, well, I know you didn't want to switch when we took you on as a managed services client, but I see that this on-site backup solution you had is failing and it's not working. Maybe there's a hardware failure. Maybe it's a tape drive. what are you going to do? It takes a week or multiple weeks to replace that hardware. You're without a backup in the interim. Why don't we go ahead and set you up before I leave with a trial of Servosity? Your techs can immediately provision a new account, download the software, and set it up before they leave to go ahead and start taking backups on-site or off-site or both, so that your clients are immediately protected. That will get you a lot of things out there tactically, but you have to have all of them armed with the ability to do that and comfortable with it so that they see it as a go-to solution. And then that way you can offer it and be the first choice while they're thinking about what to do. Let's talk about strategically. You should be incenting your sales team to offer trials and quote, or at least ask about the status of backup and disaster recovery for every single prospect you come across. Now, they've got to be better than asking one question. If they ask, do you have backup or do you have disaster recovery, they're probably going to get the pat answer of yes. But when you do a free analysis, if you do that sort of thing for their network, the state of their network, the state of the security, backup and disaster recovery. Often you'll say they say they have backup, but it's just an on-site backup to a USB drive, or they think they're backing up to tape, and in all reality, it's been 9 months since the tape's been changed, and it's failing every day, and nobody knows. The prior guy that used to be there set it up, and nobody's getting the emails. Often they think they have backup, and they don't really have backup. Are they absolutely certain they can restore it in the time they think? Might be something you want to test them on. Let us test your existing backup, see if it performs as part of your analysis. You and your sales team needs to be asking that, are you 100% sure you can count on that? I know you have it. Are you really comfortable with it? If they say yes, then perhaps you move on. But if they're at all unsure about all of those answers, that they can have the right recovery time and everything that they're looking for, dig into that. That's something you owe it to them to make sure you have rock solid for them. So how do you price this offering, right? Well, that's ultimately up to you, but let's talk about what a lot of our partners do. I don't recommend a setup fee, but some of our partners charge a setup fee. Setup fee is better than just charging your normal hourly rate. Some do a flat setup fee. You know, we're going to charge you $100 to set this up, and we're going to set it up for you. If you do that, a lot of times you'll charge what we call suggested retail price, and if you charge suggested retail price, you might provide a little bit of monitoring with that, meaning maybe you get the email alerts, but they do as well. As a managed service provider, I highly recommend you bundle this in with your offering so that all clients get it, and you have a central place to go for all of your clients. I also recommend that the higher value you provide, the more margin and more revenue you're going to get. So I would say monitor it for them completely. Perhaps the things you want to think about is what do you include? Do you give them the ability to do self-service restores? Do you restore files for them? When the backup runs out of disk space because they're running out of disk space, do you resolve that for them at no cost? Do you charge them an hourly rate? Think about what you charge. A lot of our partners charge a good bit more than suggested retail value and make 80% margins, really, really good margins, but they provide more value. They don't nickel and dime for it. They monitor more. If you're used to charging monthly, you can charge monthly. A lot of ours charge annually or multi-annually with a discount. So you may sell it for 1 year, or if you're doing a 2 or 3 year or more managed services deal, put this in along with it. Price it similarly as far as the term. You can bundle these in and price it and make it easy to understand and easy to do business. How do you quote? Hey, how do you even get your arms around quoting this? Well, the obvious is the data size they have. So they've got 100 gigs. Now you've got to account for future growth. So if you're quoting them a year, are they going to be at 150 gigs in 12 months, or are they going to be at 400 gigs? Account for the future growth if you're going to give them a quote. The other thing is retention. Do you want to keep 7 days, 30 days, a year, 7 years, perhaps more? So if you're keeping 30 days, you might account for 50 or 100% more data to keep the versions. If you're keeping a year, you probably want to keep even more. If you're keeping 7 years, you probably need to account for 4 times the data as a rule of thumb. So we can help you with that sort of thing. We have ways to calculate that and help you. But basically, current data plus how many versions of retention do you want to keep equals how much I need to understand to quote this customer. The other thing is recovery point objective. So basically what that means is when they crash, where do you want to go from a restore perspective? What I mean is, do you want to restore to last night's version? Is that acceptable? So you're running once a day backups? Do you want to restore to an hour ago? Do you want to restore to 15 minutes ago? We have the technology to do faster than 15 minutes. Do you want to restore from 1 minute ago? All of those things are possible, but the more often you back up, generally you're going to use a little more space. Not a lot more, but more. So if you take backups every 15 minutes, you're going to use more space than somebody that takes backups once a day because you're keeping more versions. So again, if you want very low recovery point times, meaning if I recover, I can go back to 15 minutes ago instead of yesterday at 5 p.m., then you're going to take more backups. All you have to do is account for that as additional storage. Not a problem. It's just about sizing it just for the client and the way that they need it. Lastly, you might consider using a free trial as an analysis tool. If you have an odd client or a different setup or something going on, you could look at the setting up a free trial and let them use it for a week or two, and then look at their account, see how much data is uploading per day, what their retention looks like. That'll give you a really, really good estimate on the data usage and the growth of their account and the way that they use their servers. So what's in your managed service? This is what I was alluding to at a high level before. So you may consider including all these things, but this is what you need to get across to your customer. Not only do I recommend you bundle most, if not all, these in your managed services for backup, managed backup services, I highly recommend you do, but communicate that. Marketing needs to say that, sales needs to say that, technical engineering needs to say that. You need to get that communicated so that you can price this appropriately and tell them exactly what's going on. So the data and cost analysis. What I mean by that is how much data they have, what does this cost, what's the appropriate level of backup, how frequently should backup. All that analysis, it doesn't have to be that hard, but there is some analysis needs to be done. You might charge a flat fee setup or no setup fee. You should certainly be monitoring this at least daily by your engineers. We have email alerts, daily digest summaries, status pages that tells you across all your customers the status of every single device and every single backup so that you know exactly what's going on. It can be monitored by you. So monitoring that by your engineers and intervening if they need. Email alerts sent to the customer. Think about self-service or assisted file restores. Which one do you want to bundle in? Meaning you can give them the ability to do file restores. They can only see their data, and they can restore data anytime they want. No extra cost from our perspective. You may, if they're sophisticated enough, you may have them restoring their own files. But maybe you want to provide assisted file restores where you or one of your engineers assist them in restoring data, restoring an Excel sheet or restoring an email. Whatever you might do, you might need to assist them in. Do you want to include, one file restore a month or something like that as part of it without charging them extra so that they feel like they get a lot of value out of this? And then, you can certainly build in limits, but think about those sort of things that separate you from others so they feel like you're not nickeling and diming them. Lastly, probably the most important thing that separates the mature MSPs from the ones that don't have the operational track record to pull this off is an SLA. So you might decide that you want to offer your customer a service level agreement for recovery of servers or operations. So we have some best practices and tips on that, but this is how you get the bigger customers willing to pay substantially more, because most people will say, yeah, we got backup DR. Yeah, we can probably pull that off. What they don't say is, I'm monitoring your operations 24/7. We look at reports every single day. We intervene within 1 day if there's a backup issue and we address it. They don't say things like, we will have you recovered within 4 business hours or 8 business hours in the DR type scenario. You can do that. You can easily do that with our technology, and have the from all the other they back it up with a can. Get profitable. Make it profitable. Do offerings for your clients, like package offerings. What I really mean by that is, while you may have some large client or specific situation you need to customize it, standardize it for the sake of your sales and your technical teams, so that you have just one or two, at the very most 3 packages for your clients. For example, backup in this kind of scenario and this kind of retention, and here's how we're going to quote it, price it, and sell it, and manage it. Or DR in this scenario. Just focus on a couple packages and scenarios for your clients, so that you can make it easy, so that it's not a huge burden to do a ton of custom analysis work every time you look at a client. A lot of your clients are somewhat similar in size and scope and technology. You can package or productize this and make it easy. You should really look at integrating this into monitoring your ticketing systems. We have APIs that allow you to do that. We have dashboards and alerts so that you can put this up on your knock screen, or any of your engineers, the status dashboard, and see all of the statuses that's going on. That makes you operationally profitable, so you don't have to spend too much time managing this. You should expect to drive margin from only do better if you're at BC and for improvement business, build more. It's easy to stored with you. And they have service provider, but that they give differentiating more margin. But there is sort of things. That's the recovery of everything. It's in a way that is not just back local backup is the best. You can deliver that. Be Windows, etc. Multiple. So recovery. Companies would call this servers. All right, guys. Sorry about that. I was disconnected. We'll keep going here. So we're talking about granular recovery exchange. This is what will be very important to recover exchange. And when I say exchange, I mean Outlook exchange, mail level, calendar items, anything you could think about in an exchange environment to recover you and provide it so that you can recover in any type of scenario, any kind of data. So attachments to emails, contacts in their contact book, an attachment of a proposal they sent out to a client, deep granular exchange recovery, the ability to search it. So really do anything inside of Exchange and Outlook. We also include in professional continuous data protection. So that's more than regular backup. That's the ability to basically do up to real-time type backup. So now you could do things like, instead of backup daily or every few hours, you could back up every minute or more often, and everything that gets saved, written to the database, the disk, etc., can immediately be pushed off-site. Again, these are things not everyone can do that allow you to really lower your recovery point objective and perform at a higher level than others. So let's talk quickly about Servosity DR, and then we will turn it over for Q&A. So Servosity DR builds on all of Servosity Professional's features and adds all of these features. So we can back up an image, any Windows machine. That means that we're getting not only the data, but the operating system, the service pack, the applications, and the data. And then we can restore it to just about anything so that you can recover your clients and their servers and their operations in minutes. The most popular option is virtual boot, which can literally boot a server up and start booting it in like 1 or 2 minutes, and allows you to get incredibly fast recovery. The thing about this is it does not matter if this is a physical machine or a virtual machine to start with. You can recover it virtually in minutes. Either way, use that as your standby server. Get your business and your client's business up and operational immediately. Look like a hero to them. Then you can order servers, do other things, and recover them to a permanent solution. A permanent solution would be like a bare metal recovery. Basically, that's the term to describe. We have a backup image of your whole machine. We're going to image and restore this to a whole other machine. The ability to do that to dissimilar hardware means that you could have started with a Dell and ended up with an HP, or a newer Dell to an older Dell to a newer Dell, for example. You're not locked into the hardware. You can restore that Windows machine to another machine, whether it be a physical or a virtual machine, and recover to any environment you need. So this really, really reduces the amount of time it takes you to recover your client, reload systems, reconfigure things, because it's an exact image of exactly what's going on. And you can recover all the files and emails, not just the images. So this gives the best of both worlds. It's all the features in our Pro plus all the features in our DR.
So this allows you to deliver a backup offering with really good retention, a disaster recovery option with very, very quick recovery times, and business continuity that allows you to easily recover in the event of a file deletion, a service pack failure, a hard drive failure, somebody hit delete accidentally, the things that happen much more commonly than a fire or a flood, and really provide the best ROI to your clients. So with that being said, I want to allow just a few minutes for Q&A. And I'm going to turn that over to Joel, and we'll go from there.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, Joel, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Just as a few more questions come in, we appreciate you guys, your guys' patience with us as we work through those audio interruptions. But go ahead and submit your questions now. We have received questions during the webinar. I do want to let you guys know, and we definitely appreciate you joining us today. If we don't have the time to answer all the questions, we will shoot you an email and send that out to you after the webinar for any questions that we can't actually answer on the call today. So the first question, this is a question that just came in right now, and it says, Damien, the biggest challenge we have involves developing and implementing a strategy to sell backup and disaster recovery. How do I even get started, and can Servosity help me?
Yeah, great questions. So hopefully your answer would be yes after seeing this webinar. It's just an indicator. This is something I recommend, this webinar, that you share. We can make it available to share with your clients, and not only with your clients, but especially with your techs, your sales folks, so they all speak this common language. The other thing that we do, very few take advantage of, is we work with you guys. So we really care about partnering. Your growth is our growth. So we work with you to help package and productize it and make it the most competitive offering in your particular area, and make it play to your strengths and your operational strengths. And we will commonly hold team sessions, coaching sessions, tech sessions, and sales sessions for our partners to make you be able to differentiate yourselves when it comes to backup and disaster recovery and make you more competitive in the landscape. So basically, at a high level, what I mean by that is help understand what you should offer: backup, disaster recovery. Do I offer SLAs? How do I price it? We do those sort of things kind of with your team or management team, and then we would work with you and your sales and tech teams to make sure you're comfortable with the capabilities, how to set it up to do those things, and that your sales teams knows what the capabilities are and how to differentiate yourselves in the market.
Great, thanks, Damien. The second question here that we'll actually tackle today is, Damien, when selling DR, disaster recovery, to prospective clients, do you recommend showing them a demo of how it works? What are some of the ways Servosity partners are doing that today?
Yeah, I would say at a high level, there's two answers to that question. It depends on your client. If they like or appreciate technology, our DR server, I wouldn't show them the setup or any of that, but some folks that are particularly appreciative of technology would be wowed by the fact that you can take a backup of the server and then immediately bring it up in minutes as a virtual version or as a virtual copy. You can do that to prove that to them during the trial or after they become a client of yours, and show them, look, I don't just say I can do it, I'm going to go here and do this. That will differentiate you, and if they appreciate technology. If they don't, or the flip side of it, depending on what you choose to do, is things like including testing, that you're going to do annual or semi-annual or quarterly testing of DR and backup will help you win clients because you'll see it. That or SLA. Again, talking about that will generally get the attention and separate you from the others. That would help you win that deal and them know that you're the person they can really trust, because you are backing this with real words and real times, not just approximations that say, I hope and I think I can probably get you back up and running, but here's how we're going to do it, and we have this process, and here's how we do it for all of our other clients.
Great. So the next question is, it just came in here and it actually says, Damien, we work with primarily SMBs, typically in the smaller range, that are price sensitive. It says actually, how do I implement or recommend disaster recovery to these type of price sensitive clients?
Yeah, so good question, and that comes up often, right? Not everybody can or wants to or needs to have the highest end version, and so that really means practically a couple of things. They might opt for backup and not really a DR offering. If they do that, you want to make sure you articulate the fact that you can restore their data, but it might take you 3 days to recover them in a disaster event. As long as that expectation is set, that's still a good thing for you. A lot of our clients do hybrids, so our DR offering doesn't require big, fancy, expensive upfront appliances that often are a deal breaker for small clients. So they don't have to commit to thousands of dollars of hardware to do disaster recovery. So often disaster recovery is now within reach of the small business where it wouldn't be with other offerings. And then lastly, there can be a hybrid in terms of maybe you're using our DR software to do images and store them on site, and we have the ability to send just the files off site. So that would give you, if the building doesn't burn down, that would give you the ability to still have the very fast recovery times, but give you a hybrid where maybe you're storing less data online, which translates to a less expensive cost by just sending files off site. So the idea is that depending on their budget, you should be able to kind of customize that for the right fit. The bottom line is you have to differentiate yourselves on how you're different than everybody else that says they do some form of backup, but they probably don't. They're probably very loose on the details of what they do or how fast they can recover. All of those ways, like the DR or the DR locally but not off-site, gives you a way to be cost-effective, maybe a little more expensive than what they're spending now, but perhaps much faster recovery times. So that gives you the most flexibility to differentiate yourselves and still be able to serve clients that have very modest budgets.
Okay, great. The next question here, and we're going to have time for just about 2 more questions here after this one. So a total of 2 more questions. This one actually says, after listening today, it sounds like I should be distinguishing the difference between just regular file level backup and disaster recovery. Can you help us understand what the difference is?
Yeah, so you absolutely should be differentiating internally amongst your team, but especially with your client, because it's really about the promise you're making to them. With file level type backup, your promise should be something like, we won't lose your data, we'll monitor it, we'll be good stewards of it, we'll make sure it works, we're going to get your data protected, backed up, off-site, but it's going to take quite a while to recover you. So in your world, it might be 2 days, it might be 5 days, it depends on the complexity of their environment and other things, but it could take you many, many days or a week to recover them and their business. If that is reasonable and acceptable trade-off based on the cost, that's what they would want. Disaster recovery has become much more popular because the gap between backup and disaster recovery is narrowing in terms of cost. So you can offer them a disaster recovery solution that could take it down from a 3 or 5 day recovery down to a few hours. And often it's only 20% more expensive than backup or something like that. It used to be 10 times more expensive. Now it might be just, $50 more a month or something that they may say, hey, this is really worth that to our business. So you certainly want to differentiate between the two and drive home those capabilities and why would I spend more when cheapest would suffice. So that's to differentiate in what disaster recovery does and what the expectations will be for the client so that they understand and have a more informed picture of what their hard-earned dollars are getting them.
Thanks for answering that one, Damien. And just to let you know, I know there's a lot of questions out there. If we weren't able to get to your questions today, we will be sending you out an email here after the webinar to answer those promptly for you guys. The last question here that we're going to answer says this, Damien. It says actually a lot of my clients are actually in the verticals of banks, medical facilities, dental offices, chiropractic offices, and more. How does Servosity handle these types of verticals?
Yeah, great question. So regulated industries are probably the most, should be the majority of your clients with backup and disaster recovery. One thing, they are typically required to have some level of offsite backup. And secondly, security and compliance are going to matter more to them. So they don't necessarily want to get a $10 a month cheaper solution and then find out that they are in violation of something that could put them out of business, like HIPAA or other things like that. And we, for example, will do things like HIPAA and other things and sign forms and become parties to agreements as needed that give your partners the level of comfort and protection they need for HIPAA compliance, PCI compliance, Sarbanes-Oxley. Those are the things that we want to help you guys understand best practices about, help you win more clients in those regulated industries. Again, a lot of people claim to be able to do backup. Can you deliver the sophistication level to meet their compliance needs and their regulatory needs and their security needs? And you can. We can help you do those sort of things.
All right. Well, thank you, Damien, for answering those questions. As you guys are still with us here this afternoon, as you can see on the screen, kind of the next steps. Actually, we have an upcoming webinar here on Tuesday, August the 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It is the importance of a business continuity plan. Join us as we discuss what makes the business continuity plan so critical and actually how to help your customers ensure they have the best plan set up for their businesses. Once again, that's Tuesday, August 5th at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, you can go to Servosity.com and you can actually fill out a trial form, and we will reach out to you. If there's anything that we can do, feel free to contact us at any time, either by emailing support@Servosity.com, or you can call us directly at 1-800-429-0500, and you can ask for Joel. We really appreciate you guys joining us today, and have a great afternoon.